What is up, Chucksters? My fellow Chucksters, how is it going? I hope your extra long weekend was enjoyable. I certainly enjoyed the 3 day weekend. Obviously, if you're in the United States, you got off for MLK Day. He was a wonderful person. He rooting for a good cause, a cause we should all uptake, which is equality for all. So keep that in mind as you go along about your day. But here we go, guys. Let's dive into Chuck versus the Sensei. Once again, thank you to all those who are listening. There's a little bit of a dip in the podcast the past couple episodes, like the number of views, but I just attribute that to everybody hating Jill because it seems reasonable, in my opinion. A lot of people hate Jill, so I'm going to take it as that. And now that Jill's gone, we're going to skyrocket views, right? Right, that's what it is. I don't know. I really like doing this podcast for you guys, and it still amazes me that after 3 years, at this point, almost 3 years, I think it'll be three this May, I believe. 3 years, and this one TV show that was on the brink of cancellation just about every year has this huge following, this huge presence online. I mean, I guess you can't necessarily call it a cult classic yet, but I think it's on its way. So once again, thanks for listening, and we're gonna keep on chugging along. So let's just dive right into Chuck versus the Sensei. And we all know how we like to start here at the Intersect Project podcast. We like to start with song of the episode and hit of the episode. Now, unlike some previous episodes, there was a lot more hitting this episode. There was a lot more fists of fury being thrown, if you catch my drift. By the way, Fist of Fury, it's a great kung fu move. By the way, kung fu movies, really fun. Even Morgan's a big fan, as you'll learn. So, anyway, back to the podcast at hand. Let's start with hit of the episode. Like I said, we a lot of hits this episode. A lot of bad guys punching each other, or getting punched, really. Well, a lot of bad guys punching too. John Casey gets pummeled by his sensei at the beginning, no doubt, and at the beginning of their fight, the end fight too. So a lot of good blows being thrown down. So my vote for hit of the episode is gonna go to John Casey when he beat the crap out of his sensei, just bam, 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 just demolishing him. So congratulations, Adam Baldwin, if you somehow are taking time out of your busy schedule to listen to this podcast. Congratulations, you won hit of the episode for Chuck versus the Sensei. And let's go to the scoreboard. Wow, John Casey, he's finally made the scoreboard this season. So let's count up. So far this season, we got Sarah Walker at 6, we got Chuck at 1, we got Casey at 1, and we have Big Mike at 1. Who's going to take this season? Like I said, right now, Sarah Walker is just, her character is running away. The character of Sarah Walker is running away with hit of the episode for this season so far. We'll see if anybody can dethrone her. It'll be a tough one, though. Like I said, she's got a lot going for her. So, let's scoot on down to song of the episode, another favorite of mine. Just because, I've said this in podcasts past, but the music is mainly part of the reason why I got really, really into Chuck. The music and some things that were going on while when I started watching this is just, it really helped me out, we'll say that. But the songs were really good. They really helped. And they're just perfect. The music producer on the show is just second to none, picking the perfect songs for the perfect situations. And for this for song of the episode for Chuck versus the Sensei, I think I chose the new song by Data Rock, and it's just catchy. it caught me. I mean, the situation it was in. I believe I'm almost certain it was at the beginning. I don't necessarily remember 100%, but I'm pretty sure it was at the beginning when he was fighting his sensei and whatnot. So that was, I don't know, it just fit the situation perfectly, to me at least. So that's why I really enjoy it. Plus, it's catchy. I like really good music, and I would say this is pretty good music. So congratulations, Data Rock. Your song, the new song, has won Chuck versus the Sensei's Song of the Episode. Congratulations to you and yours. And that wraps up those two segments. So let's just delve right into this episode. So we begin Chuck versus the Sensei with a flashback to 1994. Half a year after I was born. Barely a year after I was born. I was born in December of 93, so I was just a baby in diapers when John Casey was getting his butt kicked by his sensei. And he had a sweet goatee. Not gonna lie. Sweet goatee. So, I don't know. Watching that is weird. It's hard to not imagine Casey not being the best at fighting and beating people up. I mean, I've seen him get punched and stuff before and be shaken in a fight, but never dominated as he was in this flashback. That's it's a whole new level for John Casey, which is mind-boggling. Like I said, to imagine that he wasn't the best at one point in his life. I mean, obviously he did not. He was not born just kicking bad guys' butts, but obviously he had to. I mean, obviously he had to train to get to that point. But it's weird. We've seen him kick ass so many times. It's just, bam, there it is. He was not that good. Just came as a shocker to me. So, well, then we get to return to the Bymore present day, and we get a talk between Chuck and Morgan about Jill. Not a good talk about Jill, just an awkward talk about Jill. Kind of like, hey, how's that thing going? Oh, it's not doing good? Okay. I guess we can keep talking about it though, because you gotta work through the feelings. It's just gonna be super awkward to work through the feelings. It's basically what it was. I mean, obviously, you kind of need that situation to kind of debrief, get away from things. You need the time to debrief and get away from things after something like that goes down with Jill. Him trying to rehash things, turning out she's Fulcrum, her trying to kill his other love. So you kind of have to debrief, but you also need to talk about these things because you can't just keep feelings like that bottled up. It's weird. You just can't do that. So obviously this was much needed talk between Morgan and Chuck. So that's nice. Guess what? We've got a mission at hand for Team Bartowski. But first off, let's dive into the Bymore. Yeah, let's dive into the Bymore and then we'll come back to Team Bartowski. Now, Emmett has been the assistant manager for a while now. A long time. And he is not the brightest person, but he definitely is more savvy than is let on, because he is not easily fooled by the Bimorons. And I mean that in a loving way, because there are Bimorons. But Bimorons nonetheless they are. So obviously he's more adept at taking them down. Not necessarily taking them down, but he's more adept at taking care of them and making sure they do not ruin the business. So he decides he wants to have an Employee of the Month contest. Why places have an Employee of the Month contest, I don't understand. You're just trying to get people to, and you're trying to incentivize people to work at a job where they probably don't like working. And it's not the greatest idea, in my opinion, because usually you don't see Employee of the Month at like big jobs paying a lot of money. You see Employee of the Month jobs at like minimum wage jobs where people are just they're doing their job, they're sitting there trying to make money so they can feed their family, put a roof over their head and stuff like that, which is still tough to do. But I mean that's what they're trying to do. So I'm not a big fan of the employee of the month thing. I think it's kind of a dumb system, but this is not a podcast about my opinions on that. It's a podcast about my opinions and your opinions and the facts of Chuck and the facts of life. Not the TV show, just the actual facts of life and Chuck. The facts of life. But anyway, I digress. We go back. So, we discover that Emmett is having this whole system. Well, Morgan is not having any of it. He didn't want to do it, and then when Chuck said, I don't care because Sarah walked in, he's like, yeah, I don't care either. He didn't care all along. So, he forms his own competition within the Buy More employees to sabotage the Employee of the Month contest by having a Worst Employee of the Month competition. A competition they set up, and they're going to keep going. So they are just the worst employees ever, which is not necessarily much of a step down than they were before. They were caring employees, but they didn't really necessarily help much. So obviously somebody's got Emmett sees this. He's like, oh, so they think they can just slack off, have their own no Employee of the Month competition, and they can get away with it. And he's like, nope, that is not happening. Not happening. He calls their bluff. He straight up calls their bluff. Which is, I mean, smart managerial as a manager. It's pretty smart. So he gives them an ultimatum. He goes, hey, if you guys don't get your numbers up, you're goners. You're fired. So they just basically start being the best employees in the frickin' world. They're giving people discounts. They're helping everybody take stuff to their car. They would install it if they wanted to. Except for Jeffrey. Jeffrey's still having a hard time with customer service. He yells at somebody for giving him 4 stars, which out of 10, yes, that's bad if he's kissing their ass for 4 stars out of 10. But if it's 5 stars, I mean, come on, Jeffrey. Don't. Calm down. So they get their numbers up and they're like, well, nobody really did anything good because we all decided we were going to not participate in the Employee of the Month contest. So Morgan and his peons, specifically Lester and Jeffrey, are sitting there just waiting for Emmett to go, well, no one won because no one tried. Well, sorry. Skip won. Skip won the competition. He tried to be mean, he said, but he just probably can't do it. He seems like a nice guy. And he gets his picture up there by the founder, CEO of the Buy More Corporation. Also, a one-time prize of a 65-inch flat screen TV, which Lester and Jeffrey are obviously upset about because they didn't think there would be a prize. Now that just becomes one of those plot hole device. It's not really a plot hole, but it's a what do you call it? I'm trying to think of a word. I promise I don't usually forget this. Not an ultimatum. It's like in time travel movies. Like if you go back in time, you can this and this things don't match up. You know what I mean. You know what I'm getting at. But if they did not act badly, the prize would not have been a 65-inch flat screen TV. It would have been just the picture on the wall. But them behaving badly created that prize. So they're mad about not having a prize, not giving their all for the prize, but they would not have gotten that prize if they didn't give that prize. If they didn't not try. It's weird. I really wish I knew that word. That's really bugging me. But I won't let it affect the show. The show must go on. So that ends the buy more competition. Sad, sad day. Sad day. Emmett wins again. Emmett's winning battles, people. Emmett is winning battles. And it's not going good for him. So that does it for the buy more episode. I mean, besides the fact that Ellie and Awesome decided to stop by to register for their wedding at the buy more at the urgings of Mr. and Mrs. Woodcomb. So let's dive into the Ellie and Awesome section of the storyline. Well, last episode we found out that the Awesomes were coming for Thanksgiving, but they canceled at the last minute. So what do the Awesomes do? They take a red eye a week after, and they try and catch them. They catch them in the morning. They're here. They're ready to go. They're ready to talk wedding stuff. They're ready to go, 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 go. But the sad thing is, the Awesomes are awesome, and they're perfect. And they really, really want to help Ellie with the wedding planning. Their heart's in the right place, obviously. They're doing it because they know Ellie's mother. I mean, Ellie and Chuck's mother left them at a young age, and then their father left them when Ellie was just in like high school or college almost. It was weird. So both parents left them. So they just want to do all they can to make sure the wedding goes over smoothly. But guess, surprise, surprise, they go overboard, and Ellie is not liking it. She's having to do all this stuff that she doesn't want to do, all because the Woodcombs are just doing too much. They're trying too much. Like I said, their heart's in the right place. They just want to help because Ellie's parents aren't there, but they're not seeing what the true problem is with Ellie. She's accepted that her parents aren't at the wedding, but she's accepted that she needs help planning the wedding. She's not going to do it on her own. But ever since she was little, like she said, she imagined her dad walking her down the aisle, and that's the biggest thing that she dreamed about for her wedding. Now, guys out there, you know that when a woman really, really wants something for her wedding, you probably need to get that for her wedding if you are, in charge of that type of thing, because women dream about their wedding for a long time, and that seems really sexist of me at the same time. I'm not trying to make it come off like that, but in most cases it's true. But besides that, she just wanted her dad to walk her down the aisle, and obviously it's not going to happen. At least she doesn't think so, because their dad left a long time ago and they haven't heard from him in a while. But Chuck's like, hey, I got this, Ellie. I'm going to find our father, and he's going to walk you down the aisle, which is a perfect thing for Chuck. He's got the access to the technology. He's got access to just about any chance he has at finding his father. So, good for Chuck, taking care of his sister like that, trying to give her what she really wants for her wedding. And that about does it for the Ellie and Awesome segment. So let's go to the Team Bartowski. Team Bartowski, let's talk about them. Now, for Team Bartowski, their mission, as I said before, well, I didn't say what their mission was, but I said they were doing a mission. So let's talk about that mission. GLA, I don't remember what it stands for. Global Launching Agency, something. I don't know. Sends satellites out to all the planets, even Pluto, even though Pluto's not a planet anymore. And Chuck says that bums him out. Well, you know what, Chuck? It bums me out too. It bums me out a lot. But it has helped me to not create, but basically plagiarize the greatest pickup line in the history of pickup lines. And it's from Psych. It's not from Chuck. I know. I'm sorry. I shouldn't mention other TV shows on Psych. Or I shouldn't mention other TV shows on this Chuck podcast, but that whole line from today's episode about bumming Chuck out that Pluto's not a planet anymore, always it reminded me of my favorite pickup line that I stole from Psych when Gus says everything to every woman. You hear about Pluto? That's messed up, right? I don't know why, but it gets me every time, and it's the perfect pickup line. It has never worked because I've never used it, but I'm sure it would work if I used it. But anyway, let's get away from Pluto, like the scientific community has. Now, we get some more Casey teasing. And by Casey teasing, I mean making fun of Bartowski for having feelings and liking people and stuff like that. You know, the usual Casey stuff. But anyway, now they have to go and defend the GLA. And they have to defend it from super secret ninjas. Evidently, Casey's former sensei trains ninjas. And it's super cool. And I'm so jealous. I wish I could do ninja stuff like that. But anyway, they've got to fight the ninjas. And Chuck messes up, accidentally locks Casey inside while his sensei gets away. Not before Casey gets a pin in him. Literally, not like he puts a pin in something like you're stopping it, like figuratively. He literally has a clicky pin and he shoves it in the guy's chest. So that's impressive. And so the sensei gets away. Chuck flashes. And now everybody on Team Bartowski knows that the bad guy is Ty Bennett, Casey's former sensei. Now, when Casey stuck him with this pin, he stuck him with a buy more pin. You gotta be smarter than that, Casey. You can't bring a buy more pin to a CIA job. That's gonna lead the bad guys to the buy more. Have a non-descriptive pin on it. One that says BIC. Have the bad guy go to a BIC factory. They ain't gonna get anything done doing that. So, Bennett obviously sees that and he goes, hey, let's go to the buy more. Well, he does. Now, before this, Casey and Chuck are pretty much mincing words at this point. They are just arguing to all bits, yelling at each other, criticizing each other, just because Casey has these feelings because his mentor has betrayed the country that he loves, and Kate and Chuck just got out of his situation with Jill, where he thought he loved her, and then turns out she's a Fulcrum agent. She's a bad guy, and he thinks he knows what Casey's going through, and he kind of does. He's kind of got the similar situation going on, so he just wants to help Casey by talking things out. Casey doesn't want to talk it out, so that results to him insulting Bartowski, which means Bartowski insults him back, and they fight. They spat, because that is what they do. But anyway, they go to this supposed drop-off, which turns out to be a bomb that blows up a car. And Bennett goes to the buy more and tries to find Casey. But all he gets is Chuck following him, which leads Chuck to be kidnapped and put in the trunk of Bennett's car. Now, he meets Casey and Sarah in the parking garage of the large mart, and they play chicken. Now, at first, Casey didn't know Chuck was in the trunk, and for the most part while they're playing chicken, he kind of did. So, he endangered the life of Chuck to take out his former boss, or his mentor, and that almost gets Chuck killed, and Sarah is not having any of that, because she still has feelings for Bartowski. It's pretty obvious, so obvious that Casey is talking about it. Casey knows how much Chuck makes her feel. That's not the right wording I'm looking for, but you get what I mean. He knows how much Sarah cares for Chuck. And he tries to stop his Bennett after he gets out of the car, but to no avail. Now, when it comes down to the meeting with Beckman, everybody's like, hey, they lay it all out on the line. Chuck was in the trunk. Casey knew. He played chicken. He acted out of emotions instead of logic, and he almost got the Intersect killed. Now, I mean, that leads us to one thing. Casey's off the mission. He's too close to it. So they lock Casey in there until they can find Bennett and arrest him. Well, Casey uses this to his advantage. I mean, well, let's talk about this. Then Sarah has a little heart-to-heart with Chuck about she knows what he's going through. They have a little moment again. It's a super small moment, but a moment nonetheless. They're like, oh, well, I feel bad for you, stuff like that. You know what happened. So Sarah and Chuck had this little moment. Then they leave, and then Casey, to get out of the castle, since he can't, uses his feelings, and I use air quotes around feelings because he doesn't have them in this case. He uses his feelings that he wants to talk to Chuck about to get him out of the castle. So he uses Bartowski to get out, find where Bennett is, and then he chains him up in the orange. Well, what is he supposed to do? He can't do anything. So he calls Sarah, and she meets Casey at the location. But guess what? Chuck has already been captured because he uses his ingenuity once again, which we've learned might be from the 7 seasons of MacGyver. Hey, you got to learn it somewhere, and MacGyver's a good place to learn how to be resourceful. He uses the coolant, the cool air flowing from the compressor, and freezes the chains and then breaks it. And he goes to the location, gets himself captured, and now the sensei has to fight his protege, and Casey now has to fight his sensei. And Casey is just getting whooped. Boy, he is getting whooped. This is the battle of the century, though, folks. So Chuck goes, hey, let's get Casey as angry as possible. That's when he's at his best. There's no calm center about him. He just has an angry center. And that angry center needs to be let loose for him to beat the crap out of his sensei. So Chuck angers him, tells him, like, hey, you have feelings. This is all because you love me and you care about this team. And that just infuriates him. And he goes out and he kicks the crap out of his sensei. And then the CIA storms in. Everybody's arrested. So, there you have it, folks. We laughed. We cried. We bonded. We had a fun time with Chuck versus the Sensei. We learned a little bit more about Casey. We didn't delve too deep after a stressful 3 episodes of Chuck, I guess you would say. We didn't necessarily get too deep in this episode. This episode didn't get too deep, which I think is good planning. Because after the last 2 episodes at least, the reveal, what went down, how one character's major feelings were just destroyed, you need a more lighthearted episode. While it wasn't necessarily lighthearted, but you definitely need an episode that doesn't go as deep as the other one did into character building and I guess archetypes, stuff like that. And you need an episode where, hey, here's a little bit from Casey's past, here's a little more fighting that we're used to, and bam, Casey's just gonna kick some butt. That's what you needed after those past 2 episodes. So it was a good episode. I really enjoyed it, and I hope it made you think a little bit. So here we are, folks. This is it's the end of the episode. It's a lot of fun. Let's keep this going. How about that? Just a FYI, if you didn't hear before, or if you didn't hear any time this week, Zachary Levi was cast in the new Heroes Reborn miniseries coming to NBC. So I've never watched Heroes, but I mean, I'll probably watch Heroes Reborn. So that'll be cool. So look out for that. You got Yvonne Strahovski with Astronaut Wives Club, a miniseries coming this, I want to say this fall probably, maybe the summer, but she's going to be in that. She's in a small independent film called Manhattan Love Story. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a big fan of indie films. I'm a big fan of blockbusters too. I just like movies in general. I like characters, stories, like how things mesh, directing, stuff like that. But I'm a big fan of indie movies because I feel like they're more original, I guess. They don't base themselves off of previously written down canons, so it's more of original ideas. That's why I'm a big fan of indie films. But I mean, I'm not against a big blockbuster like Avengers or Star Wars or Lord of the Rings either. So don't get me wrong, I really love movies. So look for her in that, and then Adam Baldwin, season 2 of The Last Ship coming up this summer. First season, go catch it somewhere because it's really good. Me and my friends watch it, and we have a grand time watching it. It's a lot of fun, pretty good. So that's where they are today. So I've enjoyed this. Let's keep this going. Let's get this to the big house. Let's get Chuck moving on up. Signing off, I'm Paul. Remember, everybody loves Chuck. Some people just don't know it yet.